In this video, I'm going to show you how I process my black and white wildlife photos using a simple 6-step workflow in Lightroom. Free presets are included with this video. Follow along to find out where to download them from. The first important step in starting a black and white edit is to find the right image. You can of course process every image in black and white, but when you find the right one, the results can be amazing. I often find images in less than ideal light can work well as black and whites. I also find simpler images work well. A simple giraffe walking across an open grassland or portrait of an old elephant has a sense of minimalism, and stripping away the color adds to that minimalism. Essentially, you want to evoke an emotion through black and white photography in a different way to what color does. Black and whites almost have a nostalgic fine art quality to them, and that can really help express different emotional connections with the viewer. Step 2 is where the processing starts inside of Lightroom. I've developed and curated a selection of Lightroom presets that serve as different starting points for an edit. It's important to note that presets are only starting points. I always tweak the images after applying a preset. But let's jump into Lightroom and start editing 2 images. This video is made possible by the generous support of Outdoor Photo. In step 2, I add the preset, but before I do the preset, I adjust the exposure. The presets don't adjust the exposure at all, so you need to start off with a correctly exposed image. The next step will be to add the preset. The top preset converts to monochrome is basically a straight conversion to the monochrome profile, and no sliders will be adjusted, so that's a good starting point. Convert it to monochrome first. This will be your starting image, and then you can go through each different preset here. The name is self-explanatory. It tells you basically this preset is faded black, or it's flat, or it's a high contrast preset. So go through them, and if you want to go back to the starting point, just go back to convert to monochrome or reset. That'll take you back to the starting monochrome preset. And I think for this image, I'm going to use high contrast. Now, as I explained in the intro, you need to tweak these presets. No preset will apply perfectly to any image. The Adobe monochrome profile reads the color in the image, and the white balance will affect how the image looks. The white balance can make quite a change to the image, so just adjust the white balance as a starting point, and you can see how that's changing the image. The tint slider as well will help. So just tweak those. It's a nice adjustment to start with, and just get the feeling that you want. So I think I'm going to leave it around about there, and that basically completes step 2. Now, step 3 in the process will be adjusting global settings. So now we'll go through all of the settings except the color grading and the ones at the bottom. I will go through and adjust what I feel like this image needs. I feel like the whites are slightly hot here. So I'm just going to bring down the whites. I'm going to increase the blacks a little bit. Maybe some shadows. And the highlights here a little bit. It's nice to tweak those sliders because the preset will never be perfect, but again, the preset is there as a good starting point. I'm going to look at the tone curve. I feel like the blacks are a little bit dark. I want to raise the blacks a little bit to make them a bit softer. I like softly contrasted blacks, and I like the lights to be quite contrasty. So the blacks are a lot softer. I'm looking at the histogram to make sure I'm not blocking up any of those shadows or blowing those highlights. So I feel like that's looking fairly good. Another nice thing to do as part of a global adjustment is to go into this B&W section. That's where the HSL sliders are for a color image, but in a black and white, these are the sliders that you're given here. Now, if you go to your keyboard and you press the backslash in Lightroom, it's going to show you a before preview of what the image was like before you applied any editing to it. Now, on these black and white sliders here, if you pull down some of these sliders that relate to the colors in the image, it will change the brightness of those colors. So we can see in this image, it's a very monochromatic image. There's only really browns and maybe a slight blue on this buffalo. So you can actually then adjust those colors accordingly. You can see it's having a very minimal effect on this image, but in the next example, it'll have quite a dramatic effect. You can see the blue affects it quite a lot. So you can go into the black and white mix and adjust colors separately. So I'm happy with that image, and that's step 3 complete. I'm happy with the global adjustments to the image. So step 4 is where you start doing some selective adjustments using the masking tools in Lightroom. As you can see, I've already added a couple of masks here. You can see I've darkened down the edges. And that's just using simple radial filters and some gradient filters as well. I'm going to add a couple more. I feel like the bottom of the image, I want that to become a little bit more darker. So I'm just going to drag up a mask there. Drop the exposure a little bit. I like to zoom out so I can pull this gradient filter a bit further down. I think I might drop the exposure a little bit more above the buffalo there. And then I think I'm going to add a very soft glow to the highlights. Now to do that, click your new mask, click luminance range, and then we're going to click on the very brightest part of the image here. So now you can see in red, that's where it's selected the tones. I'm just going to feather that selection a little bit, dragging the slider down here. So I really only want to affect the very bright highlights. I'm basically going to add some negative clarity and a slight little bit of negative dehaze. That's going to soften those highlights up a little bit. And I might take a little bit of texture out there as well. That basically is Lightroom's equivalent of an autumn effect. It's simple to do, but it does work, especially on an image like this. There's a lot of atmosphere, there's a lot of dust, and I think that will work well. So just a before and after, you can just see, let me fit this image to the screen, and I'll turn that mask on and off. It's a very subtle effect, but it does add a little bit of glow to those highlights there. So after you finish doing your selective work, you click done, and we'll move on to step 5, which is color grading. So simple, go to color grading here, and this is where you'll be adding some color to the image. You can add colors to the midtones, to the shadows, to the highlights. I really like using this. Very rarely do I use a plain black and white image. I like to add a little bit of a blue tint, especially to the shadows, and then a warm tint to the highlights. But included with the presets are a bunch of color presets here. These color presets will only affect the color grading panel here. So let's just go through them. This is number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They're very subtle effects, but I like to go through them to apply a different color grade to the image. I quite like number 1. It's adding some nice blue to the shadows. But if you want to take out the color, if you just use this preset here, MD color, no color, that'll just take out the color grading or reset it back to 0. But I think I like number 1. I like the effect that it's having. You can come into the color grading panel here and adjust everything accordingly. You can take out some color, add in some more, change the color. And what's also nice is if you develop your own color grading effects for your images, you can actually save your own preset. And to do that, once you're happy with your color grade, let's just add in some funky colors here, just as an example. Let's just say you're happy with that and you want to apply that to all your images. What you do is you come over to the preset panel here, click the plus, click create preset, and then you can title your preset. Let's just say new color. And what you want to do is check none. That's going to take away ticks in all of these boxes here. And then you want to click this color grading box there, and then you want to select the group where you want it to go. So I'm going to add it to this B&W presets group. Click create. And then you can see there is the new preset, and you can click that every time you want to change the color to your custom color. So I'm going to go back to color 1. I'm just going to delete this preset. And that basically completes step 5 of the workflow. And then step 6 is doing all the non-creative adjustments to your image. That will include cropping the image. As you can see, I've applied a crop here. It'll be cleaning up dust spots. You can add sharpening to the image, adjust the noise reduction, and you can do some lens corrections here as well. But that is the image we finished with. A quick before and after. You can see that's the starting raw file, and after the simple 6-step workflow, we've come out with this image. But let's jump onto the second image. Let's go to this cheetah one. So step 1 in the workflow was selecting this image. Step 2 is adjusting the exposure, applying a preset. As you can see, these different presets really give you a different feeling. I think I quite like this low extremes. It's a very flat image to start with, but I quite like the quality to it. And then I'm going to play around with the white balance just a little bit to see what different effect we can get. I think something like that works quite well. Step 3 is the global adjustments. I'm going to see how I can adjust these sliders to improve the image a little bit more. I feel like the preset actually worked quite well from the start, but I'm just adding a few adjustments here. Going to the tone curve. And then going to the B&W sliders. If I click the backslash, I go to the before. I just want to see what colors on the image. There's a nice little brown color here, so I'm going to click this little color picker tool here in Lightroom. And I'm going to click up and down. You can see through that Lightroom is selecting the color and adjusting the luminance of it. So I'm just adjusting that up. Obviously you can adjust the sliders up and down. I like to go through all of the sliders on every image and just see what happens. So I'm making it quite bright there. There's no greens in the image, so no, there's no effect there. There's no effect on the aquas. Blue, no effect. And then the purple and magenta, I don't think there will be anything there. And not much on the reds. There's a little bit of effect in the background, but I feel like this image benefited from raising the luminance of the orange a little bit there. So step 4 will be selective work. Now I'm going to zoom out quickly here to 6%. I want to add in some filters here. I'm going to add a linear gradient to the bottom. I want to darken the bottom of the image quite a bit. So I like that darkening there. And then I'm going to do the opposite to the top. I'm going to brighten the top. I want to create the effect of light coming through from the top there. Just going to brighten that up a bit. Actually quite a bit. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some negative dehaze just to add in a little bit of a atmospheric light there. Not too much, you don't want to go over the top because it looks fake. A setting of about -15 will work well. Now in this image, I like the exposure on the whole image, but I feel like those eyes are a little bit too dark. So I'm going to zoom into 100% and I want to paint on those eyes. Just increase the brush size a little bit. Add this eye here. The reason why I zoomed into 100% is just to make sure I did a decent job on the painting there. So then I will zoom back out, and then I want to just add a little bit of exposure to those eyes there. Just gives it a little bit more life. You don't want to go too overboard because it looks fake, but something very subtle just helps, especially with the connection to the viewer and the animal. It helps brightening those eyes a little bit there. I might add a little bit of clarity too. So I'm just going to zoom out again. I like to look at the image from a distance and see what else it needs. I feel like adding a little bit of a linear gradient to the sides might work well, just to help darken that a little bit, just to emphasize that appearance of light from the top. Before I go into the color grade, I just want to go back into the basic panel. I just want to adjust the exposure a little bit more. I want the blacks to drop a little bit, just to add in a little bit more contrast. So I think that works pretty well. That's the before and that's the after. So step 5 is using the color grading. So I will go through these color presets, but I know for this one I quite like number 3, so I'm going to stick with number 3. Step 6 is the non-creative adjustments. That is cropping the image, cleaning up any dust spots. There's a few flies hanging around this cheater which I'll clean up. You can also then adjust your detail, your sharpening, your noise reduction, or any lens corrections. So this is before, and that is after. You can see we've created a different mood to the image. The color one is very flat. It's a little bit boring to me. There's not a lot of color. It's very monochromatic, but I think taking that color away has really simplified the image, but it's given it a very fine art, nostalgic feeling to it. And I quite like it. Thank you so much for watching. The presets I use in this video are freely available for download via my website. There's a link in the description below. If you enjoy the presets or find this video helpful, please let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you're interested in another processing tutorial, check out this video here where I show you how to remove noise from your nature photos. But until next time, cheers.